Hey guys, it's Jason, and welcome to the Beyond Hope Project. I am the champion of hope, and I am here to hopefully deliver some hope to you. Before we jump in, make sure you're sharing this with everybody. We're really trying to grow this and need your help. And I'm going to leave it at that. And I want to jump into this episode, which is the whole idea of how we let assumptions steal our joy. And I have a little story about myself that is going to hopefully tie a big bow on this for you to understand how far we can let our assumptions just take us. And hopefully, you hear a little bit of yourself in this story as I go through for you. So, as you're well aware of, I was diagnosed in July 12th, 2021 with a grade 4 glioblastoma. It's a little bit of brain cancer. Doing great though, all clear still, all that good stuff like that. Everything is doing awesome. And you would think after 3+ years that I would kind of get used to things, feeling weird sometimes. I will say the one thing that is surprisingly, uh, shockingly, whatever to me is like how much I am aware of when my body goes one way or the other. And I'm typically pretty good at catching it and realizing the story as I'm starting to tell myself. But there's sometimes where some things kind of sneak on by and a story starts to form. To give a little context for this, it's about the silliness that, this misguided assumption did. And when I tell you what it is, you're going to kind of giggle because it is it's the simplest, craziest thing, but I'll tell you why. Um, it makes sense, and hopefully you'll see how this played out. So, a little bit about me. So, I about a month before I was diagnosed with the tumor, I had a cataract in my right eye. Now, what was weird about this was this cataract kind of flared up out of nowhere. It could have been there, and I didn't pay attention to it. I sometimes wear glasses. Prior to this, I wear glasses all the time now because I actually had cataract surgery, so I can't see anything up close. But back then, I would wear glasses on occasion. And so, if you notice, like when you get a smudge on your lens, or if you have sunglasses, you get a smudge there, you kind of just ignore it and think it's just a thing, and you look through it. That's kind of what it was for a while. And then out of the blue, I just woke up one day and there was a fog over my right eye, and I had no clue what that was. And went to the eye doctor, and oddly enough, 2 days before that, I had just had an eye exam, and I thought they put something in my eye that made that happen. Turns out that it was some cataract that just decided to, like, yo, here we go, take off. And so I had to end up getting surgery, all that good stuff like that. Fast forward a month later, I had my seizure, and that's where the tumor is discovered. So that I tell you that to give context to this misguided assumption that happened recently. So, say my doctor has been telling me for the last like year or so that I had a cataract developing in my left eye. But it would take some time, and nothing really to worry about yet. Even my cataract surgeon told me the same thing, so I was well aware of it happening. And then about 2 weeks ago, I woke up one morning, and it was like if you ever woke up where you have like you feel like you have like slime over your eye or whatever, you got to rub your eye, splash some water, and all of a sudden then it clears up and stuff like that. That's kind of what it looked like in my head. And I splashed the water and it didn't clear up. And I was just like, wow, this is really strange. And then I made it through the day, didn't really think much of it. I did a lot of taking my glasses off, thinking I had a smudge there, and it just wouldn't go away. I mean, I remember getting up, washing my glasses a couple times, Windex, all this stuff like that. And it just kept happening. Well, then the next day I woke up and it was, once again, we're back to the fog over the eye. Now, um, I know what it was. I knew it was a cataract. I mean, I've experienced it on the right side. Now, given my previous story I just told you, now you draw your own conclusions of what assumption I made. I didn't go to the fact that, oh, this is just another cataract. I just got to go to my eye doctor and get surgery to get it removed. And voila, I'll have the vision of a 70-year-old for the rest of my life. No, I didn't. I went straight to, oh my God, the brain tumor's back, and here we go again. And I spent, better part of a day talking myself off of a ledge over and over and over again, trying to distract, trying to do different things to get myself off of this assumption train. And instead, I just kept kind of building it. But then I would catch myself because one of the things that my doctor, shout out Dr. G, one of the things that he did tell me when I initially told him about the cataract in my right eye was because I was curious when I first was diagnosed if this is related. And of course, it's not. There's nothing related between the two. But even though that was told to me, I still made that assumption. And, fast forward, I had, luckily by timing, I had my newest MRI that was scheduled that week as well. So it was kind of like that was the thing to get to the finish line, right? It was like I can assume all this stuff, but I kept catching myself saying like, yeah, but I'm getting an MRI on Wednesday. Then I'll know for sure. I'll have confirmation, and it's a lot of times where we think that, we sometimes will do stuff and we tell the universe that like, if you just get me through this, I promise, I'm going to stop this. And, you know, when it came to the MRI, I went into it, trying to be calm, telling myself the positive stuff, all those good things like that. But in the back of my head, I just kept thinking like, oh man, like this has to be. And, I did the same routine I do. So when I go to get MRI, I drive by myself on purpose. I let myself think and feel all those things. And then when I walk in the door and I get an MRI machine, I always thank the MRI tech person. And I go into a meditation and just check in and know that I did everything I could that was possibly good for me going into that exam. Did the same routine again. And then the next day we have the test results at my hospital. And if you've listened to any of my stories, you know that there's a certain first doctor that wasn't the greatest. And I have not seen this person since that day. And, truth be told, I don't really care to see that person. But just so happened that we are in the waiting room, which usually kind of in right away. But for this one, we are sitting in the waiting room a lot longer. And I hear a voice and I look over and that doctor is walking out the door. And immediately, here comes another assumption. Oh my gosh, my doc that I love and I'm so happy is on my team isn't here. And this is the doctor that I'm going to have to see. Because out of all the times I've been here and over these 3 years of appointments, they've not been there that day that I come in. So I assume immediately that like it's bad stuff. And of course, it's going to be this doctor that's going to have to tell me the bad stuff again. And I let myself roll with that train so much that I could suddenly start feeling my heart race. I could suddenly feel like my blood pressure going up. And it was kind of like a really little mini panic attack while trying to look cool on the outside. And even going back into the room, finally, back, I was listening, for my doctor's voice because he has a very distinct voice and it kind of sticks out. And I didn't hear it, but I kept hearing this other doctor's voice. And at one point, somebody knocks on the door, and their voice sounds a lot like this doctor. And it was somebody that's a patient advocate that's stopping by to see if I needed anything. But it immediately spiked all of these stories, all of this stuff, and it just started, again, this spiral. And I don't know about you, but when I get kind of nervous or like get ready to get on a flight, all of a sudden I have to pee 100 times and all that stuff like that. So I'm like, I need to go to the bathroom. I get up and go to the bathroom and come back out, and I can hear my doctor's, the good doctor's voice in my room. And I walk in, he's laughing and joking with my wife, sees me, hey, Jason, how's it going? Shakes my hand. Everything's good. Everything looks good. And it was like this release of like pressure and all the stories again. And it was like going through this cycle of all this stuff all over again that I had to put my hand on his shoulder. I was like, first I got to tell you this story. And I told him a little thing and he said, I told you that stuff wasn't related. I know you did. That's what actually got me through all of this week was this stuff. But it turns out that like I created a whole story based off of one tiny thing. I got a physical before I left, before that week before. And I even allowed that crap to flow into the thing because one of the numbers was off. That wasn't even a bad thing now that I got a consult from a different doctor, it wasn't even a bad thing that it was off. It was just my protein. I didn't know what it was. Rather than looking it up, because I learned that Dr. Google is not your friend a long time ago, but instead of looking it up, I just assumed like because it was the only thing that was high on it, that there must be something wrong. And I say all that to just like ask the question, how often have you ever done that? You make an assumption about something that you haven't even bothered to experience yet based off of some sort of past thing that you've been through. Now, I think like me, if you can recall that pretty quick, it's probably based on a good reason. Like I feel like my assumption was justified, so to speak, because it was based on this an emotion, right? It was a pretty intense emotion. You don't really forget when you're diagnosed with brain cancer, and the things that led up to it and the awareness. So I kind of do understand the justification for it. But I would be lying to you if I told you that I felt like it was something that I should have allowed to continue. And I wish that I could go back and kind of just start to ask myself this better questions. And it's those moments that start to, like really shape the things that we're learning as we're growing and stuff like this. And I feel that these things are what has helped me become a better speaker, become a better, coach, become a better, you know, writer, become a better at doing this, is being able to understand that like just because I have a handle on all this stuff doesn't mean that there's not going to be more lessons to learn. There's not new evolutions in all of those things. And so what we end up doing is we create these like false narratives all the time. We create these stories that aren't real based off of our past stuff. And so when we're doing this, have you ever noticed that you create lines between something that is completely unrelated? I mean, I think what we do is we tie together a series of stories to reflect exactly what we're trying to feel in that moment. If I feel like it's back, I need to find out every reason why it's back and then start to tie all those things. And they can be completely unrelated, right? Think about if there's any time in your life where you've gone through something similar, where it could be something down to the way somebody looked at you at the grocery store. You make that assumption into adding it to the story of you're looking at it that everybody's out to get you or whatever it could be. I certainly have done that myself, and I think that a lot of us do those types of things. And in these false narratives, what we're actually doing is we're stealing the most precious part from us, which is time. It's joy. It's the moment. I spent, a week and a half stealing from myself because I was worried about a stupid cataract, thinking that cataract translated to all of my problems, rather than just realizing it is what it is. It's still here right now. I still like my surgery is scheduled for the 17th, and I'm super excited not because I get to have another surgery, but because I'll be able to see again. It's really strange. If anybody ever wants to know what a cataract is like, imagine like if you were wearing glasses and you Vaseline your one lens. It's kind of like that. Or if you ever get out of a shower and it's all fogged up, and you try to look in a mirror, it pretty much half of my eyesight is like that right now. So it's just really, really annoying. Doesn't hurt, doesn't, whatever, but it's annoying. And so that's why I'm excited about that. But I think about like, was the trade-off worth it? Was the trade-off in all of the emotions that I put myself through worth the effort of creating these stories? And of course the answer is no. And what I do realize though is that like it's another affirmation for me that tells me that through resilience, how much I grow. It allows me, and it's a reminder to me that if I'm going to continue to be this person that is beating this thing, I need to make sure that I'm checking in with myself and checking in with my awareness, checking in with the ability to like love myself, to do the hard work, make sure that I'm showing up every day, being very persistent in this thing because it's not going to let up. It's something that it's always going to be something I'm going to deal with. And I need to make sure that I'm empowering myself with the right tools to overcome these moments, these hiccups, instead of writing a story based off of something that happened in the past, using what I know now to build a future that I actually want. And what I would encourage you to do is think about those things. Like, how often are we doing those very things to ourselves? What are we hoping to accomplish by living in a world that is based off of all things that we've put in the past, and tying together two things that have nothing to do with the other in order to make sure that you're feeling good in the moment, and maybe you're on a pity party, or you're on a journey where you're just feeling down about yourself and all those things like that. Now, here's the part that I want to teach you about what I learned in this whole thing. Is at any point in time, I could have just reminded myself of what my doctor told me, like truly believed it, right? Not just like, hey, he said it wasn't related, but really realized that, like, worst case scenario, let's say it was, what would I have done different? What, like, so if I would have just accepted that it is what it is, I could have probably like taken it and done something with that time that was actually impactful for myself and others, rather than just keep digging up something that just had zero impact on my life, other than to take away the stuff that I actually enjoy doing. Because it was in the joy of doing those things that you're going to find those escape routes on your path to figuring out who you are. And I think often we forget that. Most of the time what we're doing is we're going down through life, not realizing that the experiences you have had that are in those negative spaces are the things that actually are building you up to the places you're trying to go. It's to that growth and resilience that you find the new version of yourself. And there's plenty of times for you to sit down and take a rest and reflect on how far you've come. And this is how you go from building a false narrative to building a positive one, realizing that, like, there's no good in reflecting on the past stuff. It's there to teach us a lesson and in to the future stuff we're dealing with. The idea that, like, long before, the tumor was there, I already had a cataract growing in my right eye. Like, but for whatever reason, I tied those two things together, and then immediately tied my left eye to it, instead of just like, I got bad eyes. That's it. I've worn glasses since I was in second grade. So it's not a surprise that like something wacky would go wrong with my eyes. You know, I am, if I'm being honest, kind of excited about being able to like look at the world 2020. It's going to be weird to like actually not have to put glasses on or contacts to see everything in the world. So like that's a whole new thing. That's a whole new thing that I can actually enjoy. I probably won't enjoy the fact that if I leave my reading glasses everywhere, that I won't see anything. But there's always a trade-off for all this stuff. So as we grow, realize that we have to kind of let go of stories. Our assumptions, really are going to be things that hold us back. You can't go into every situation thinking the worst case. Think about the idea that maybe somebody has brought a movie to you and you were like, I don't want to see this movie. I've seen this kind of movie a million times. It's going to suck. I just don't want to waste my time doing this and all this stuff like that. And you finally give into it, maybe because you really love this person, or, like you're like, fine, next time I get to pick the one, or whatever it is, however it plays out. And you sit down and watch the movie. And at first you could be kind of like, well, this sucks. This is horrible. But then there's some sort of pivotal thing where all of a sudden you get sucked into the movie. And at the end of it, you're like, wow, I really am glad that I watched that movie. Think about how many times that has happened to us, where we are in a situation where we come in we're predicting one outcome. And then we finally are in it enough that we drop that prediction and we just kind of are. And in that, we discover that like, it wasn't so bad. I'm actually glad I watched that movie. It actually turned out pretty cool. And then you're telling somebody else about it, and somebody else checks out movie and they say like, man, thanks for introducing me to that movie. This is our life. We make so many assumptions about things that are completely unrelated, carving paths for ourselves that aren't really serving ourselves well, instead of just realizing that it's just the way we're thinking in the moment. Let that thought go the same as you've let every other thought go. Don't dwell on the things that are there to distract you when you're on a mission to create something that you really want. And I wanted to pass that lesson on to you because I allowed a cataract to derail the thing that brings me joy, which is spreading hope, which is helping people see themselves in my story, being somebody that believes that what I think about, I could bring about. It took away that from me. And all because I allowed myself to get distracted. And for a huge growth point to point out to all of you listening, this was somebody that meaning me, that would in the past would have blamed other things. Of course, this happens to me. Why wouldn't it happen to me? All this stuff like that. And I'm proud of myself for the fact that I didn't allow that to happen this time. Instead, I just kind of let it be. I understood that there was an MRI coming up. I understood that there was an end to this path, that I could figure out what would happen then. And I allowed myself to kind of go through without it just completely derailing all my days. But it did take some moments. And this is what I really wanted to drive home in this episode, is just finding your strength to overcome the assumptions that are trying to steal your joy, and stop assuming so much. There's that whole saying that everybody always says is like, you know what you make when you make an assumption. You make it an ass out of you and me. And it totally fits, because you realize in the moment, like in hindsight, like what you took from yourself. And I hope that through the process of sharing these things, that you see yourself in my story and you learn from these things, because the world is already full of enough narratives that you don't need to build more for yourself. Focus on the story you're telling yourself and overcome the things that you're not telling yourself, right? And realize that there's so much joy out there waiting for you to discover if you just get out of your own way and allow it to come to you. Stop building walls that are stopping the evolution of yourself, and get to know the real you. Get to sit down with yourself and find that you are pretty amazing. And I think in that process, you're going to discover that while you make assumptions, they don't have to control you. And that's the really cool part and the lesson to be learned in all this stuff. So guys, as we wrap this up, I just want to remind you that, you're doing a great job. Being a human is not easy. Sometimes life is going to kick you. Sometimes life is going to make you draw assumptions to things that have nothing to do with it. And sometimes you might just get a cataract, and realize that with a simple adjustment of a non-invasive surgery, you will be able to see better too. You just need to analyze what you're doing. Be hyper aware of how you're feeling. Be open-hearted to do the tough stuff for yourself. Persist every day and show up for yourself. And when all those three come together, you're going to feel pretty empowered. So guys, as we say goodbye here too, just make sure that you're sharing this. I'm looking for 2 people. That's it. If you know 2 people that could benefit from this stuff, just share that with them, and let those 2 people share with 2 other people. And this is how we start this evolution of hope. And I hope that you take the moment out today to find a reason to celebrate who you are, because everybody else that is sitting on the sidelines of their life is waiting for you to become exactly who you're supposed to be. And above all else, I hope this helps.
Foxland Media. Think big.